Hello and welcome back to Shulchan HaRav. We continue in Hilchos, Betzias, HaPas, Siman Kuf Samach Zayin. We pick it up with Sif Gimel. Mitzvah min hamuvchar levarach al pas kishi shlema. As we mentioned earlier, that it is the best way to do the mitzvah of making hamaitzi is to be done on an entire loaf of bread and not just a piece. Not breaking into pieces. Don't bake it into pieces first. Make the bracha when it's a loaf and then cut it up. Don't cut it up first and then make a bracha on it if they're going to bring you a full loaf later. But and even if all you're getting is the slice, if all you can get is a slice, then make it on a bigger slice, and don't break it down into smaller pieces until after the bracha. You have to finish the entire bracha while the loaf is whole, or while the piece is the large piece. And even after you finish saying the bracha, don't start breaking the bread into pieces until, or cutting it or whatever, until the majority of the people listening have said Amen. If they're being yotze with your bracha, make sure you wait until they finish Amen. It's important to know that the response of Amen from the people listening who are being yotze with the bracha, that is part of the bracha. If there are a few people that say a longer amen than is necessary, you don't have to wait for them. Anyone who lengthens their amen response longer than is necessary, they are making mistakes. So this is true by all amens, by Shemona Esrei. We talked about this, I'm sure, by any other bracha as well. It is appropriate to make a small cut with a knife into a piece of the bread before you start making the bracha, so that it doesn't take as long to cut the bread after the bracha, so you're not having as much of an interruption between the bracha and the eating. But don't separate it until you finish the entire bracha. This is not called a sliced piece of bread at this point when it's just this small little impression from the knife. You've seen it, you do this on Shabbos. Most people do this on Shabbos. If you're doing this during the week, if you're having like a loaf of bread, you do it during the week as well. But you just push the knife in slightly. That does not render it a slice. And you can tell that this is not a slice as long as you've only cut enough that if you pick it up from that part that where the cut is, the entire loaf will come with it. And then it's really, you haven't sliced the bread. You just kind of made a little cut inside of it to hasten the slicing process so that there's not as long as a separation from the time you finish the bracha until you eat. Do not cut it more than this. If you cut it in such a way that it's cut so far through that if you grabbed it from that slice area, the rest of the loaf would not come up with it. It would like fall off. Even though if you picked up the main loaf, the cut side would come with it. That's considered cut if you've cut it so much that if you picked up that sliced side, the other part would fall off. So don't do that. Therefore, on Shabbos v'Yom Tov, he's saying here now that not like most people do, that they don't cut it all on Yom Tov or Shabbos until after the bracha, because maybe your hand's going to slip and you're cutting more than you need, than the amount that you're supposed to, and then it comes out that you're breaking your bread on the small piece, you're making your bracha on the small piece, and as we know, on Shabbos you have to have 2 full loaves. So the difference would be like during the week, you're making more of an incision into the loaf, whereas on Shabbos, you're really kind of just touching the edge of the knife into the bread and making kind of an impression and not cutting it all. That would seem to be what he's saying here. We're not worried on Shabbos that because you're not making an actual incision into the loaf, there will be now a longer separation or interruption between the finishing of the bracha and the eating. He says, don't worry about that. The waiting without actually speaking is not considered an interruption, really. But during the week, during the week where you don't have to worry about a full piece like you do. You don't have like a Mishnah, obviously, during the week. So if you did slice more than necessary, it's not that big of a deal. And since we can do this during the week and do it in a better way, we do it during the week, we can make a bigger slice. Nevertheless, if a person forgot and made the full slice into the loaf just like he would on Shabbos, again, only the amount that would render it still connected to the extent you could lift it up from that side and the entire loaf would come up with it, but it's a much larger cut. If you forget and you do that on Shabbos, lehivsid alechem mishnah, that's not considered a loss in the lechem mishnah. Shekol she'oiches b'prusa v'shara kiko elima, because as long as you haven't cut it so far down that it's not going to come up with it when you pick up that slice part, harehu kishol l'chol davar, that's considered a full piece no matter what. But uga daka gam b'chel, a thin batter, a thin cake-like batter. You do not have to make a slice in it before making the bracha, because cutting through it is very easy. It's so soft, so there's not going to be any kind of delay whatsoever. Have a great day.